Tonight, they are about to engage in a life-or-death battle against the zombies, and no one is certain if they will make it out alive. But for the sake of their children and their homes, they have no choice but to stand their ground. Soon, the first zombie emerges from the woods, signaling the arrival of the zombie horde. In the shroud of night, the zombies gradually reveal their forms. Despite their slow pace, their sheer numbers give off an unstoppable vibe. The thought of a few dozen people facing thousands of zombies has some trembling with fear. Aaron's command helps dispel their fear. As the zombie horde draws nearer, Aaron refrains from ordering an attack because Eugene's first line of defense comes into play. The power supply Eugene set up during the day has been activated. They had hoped that the zombies would be decapitated when they approached the electrified wire, but reality proves otherwise. The sheer number of zombies overwhelms the wire, causing it to collapse within less than a minute. Eugene sighs softly. It seems like the plan isn't working after all. The zombie horde continues past the tree stumps and marches toward the hilltop. The sheer quantity is daunting, but there's no other option at this point. They must fight. Upon Yaluan's command, the troops disperse and move forward. Shield bearers take the front, spear wielders follow, and archers remain in place to shoot. Just as they had trained, the zombie horde reaches the fence, and the warriors advance, wielding their weapons to dispatch the zombies. This defensive line allows them to eliminate the zombies without suffering any casualties. The pressing force of the zombie horde makes the fence creak and seem on the verge of collapsing. At the same time, behind the zombie horde, the Whisperers begin launching something towards them. These projectiles fly over the dark night and land among the frontline combatants, exploding into yellowish liquid. Initially, they pay little attention to it, but they gradually realize something is amiss. The scent is reminiscent of resin. Soon after, a streak of fire cuts through the night sky and ignites a raging blaze. Accompanied by screams from within, Daryl and Ezekiel approach and find their companions engulfed in flames. It dawns on them that these tree branches, like gasoline, ignite fiercely when exposed to fire, a truly devious tactic. Aaron immediately orders a retreat. Continuing in this manner would result in either being eaten by zombies or burned to death by the raging fire. They retreat back to the community, where the sturdy walls can hold for a while longer. Without a blockade, there were gaps in some places. However, just as they retreat, the Whisperers launch a second assault. This time, their projectiles hit the walls directly, causing the walls to burst into flames. The battle today is turning out to be even worse than expected. 10 minutes later, the entire hilltop structure was engulfed in flames, and the mansion was lost in the inferno. Carol stood on the wall, using his bow and arrows to kill zombies, but it was like a drop in the bucket. As the fire raged, the wall had already developed a breach. Daryl and the others had no choice but to have the shield bearers take the front while the others used spears to kill the zombies. Their goal was to create a wall of corpses to block the zombies' horde. Earl and the others don't panic. They still use stone throwers to kill the zombies. Not a single person gave up. The others did the same thing, cleaning up the scattered zombies that had broken in. But amongst the zombies are the Whisperers, and these freaks will strike when they get the chance. The gap is working. The speed of the incoming zombies had slowed down. Following the prearranged plan, Ezekiel searched for all the children to prepare to lead them to safety. However, at this moment, he realized that Judith was nowhere to be found. At this very moment, Judith was facing a group of 3 zombies, and she managed to stab the last one with a quick, decisive motion. To her surprise, this person turned out to be a Whisperer. Judith hesitated for a moment, but the Whisperer, fatally wounded, would not survive. Back at the breach, they continued to fight, giving it their all. 10 minutes later, a wall of bodies has formed, and the zombies have been stopped. This strategy was working. Just as everyone breathed a sigh of relief, the adjacent wall suddenly collapsed with a loud crash, allowing another large group of zombies to pour in. They were preparing to repeat the tactic. However, this time, they had lost the geographical advantage, and there was no way to eliminate all the incoming zombies in a short time. Yumiko was about to shoot an arrow when she noticed a figure in the midst of the zombie horde. It was Magna. Yumiko couldn't believe her eyes. Her good friend was still alive. Carol stood on the wall, looking at the zombies and flames everywhere. She knew that the hilltop was lost, but she hoped that everyone could escape and survive. The long night passed, and the Whisperers began to clean up the battlefield. Although the hilltop was completely destroyed, Alpha did not achieve her goal. Most of the people inside had escaped. More importantly, she hadn't seen her daughter Lydia. Negan had thought about saying something but was quickly scolded by Beta, who told him not to meddle. Beta had always found Negan annoying. Beta then ordered Negan to gather nearby zombies and not be a nuisance here. Negan reluctantly complied. After all, Beta was the second in command. So, Negan strolled into the nearby woods. He had no intention of actually gathering any zombies. He was just going through the motions. At that moment, Negan saw a limping figure in the distance. Wasn't that Lydia? Negan quickly followed after her. At the same time, Luke was severely injured and unconscious, and Aaron was dragging him away from the area. But then he sees Negan, who was tracking Lydia. Aaron was furious. This treacherous dog, Negan, was here of all places. Just as the two were about to erupt into conflict, zombies approached from both sides. Negan stood still and watched. The zombies couldn't do anything to Aaron, and he wasn't going to help. Instead, he's going to calm Aaron down. Lydia was limping along. Everyone was separated and she was ready to go to the rendezvous point. Suddenly, Negan emerged from the sidelines. Lydia was kind of glad to see him, but the mask in Negan's hand made Lydia realize that he had joined the Whisperers, heading towards the rendezvous point were Alden and two others, walking along a road. However, the child in Alden's arms kept crying inconsolably. No matter how hard they tried to soothe the baby, Alden couldn't allow Mary to have her way. So he unleashed a barrage of angry words. He despised these heartless creatures who abandoned their children and even told Mary to stay away. This time, Alden didn't refuse, nor did he speak. He awkwardly handed the child over to Mary. Mary took the child, and it seemed that the baby sensed his mother's presence. As he stopped crying and curiously stared at Mary, Alden just looked and didn't say anything, though there was some relief in his eyes. Half an hour later, they were resting in the woods, and the child was very good in Mary's arms. Alden looked at the harmonious scene across the street and took the initiative to ask about the child's mother. Mary became a bit melancholic when this topic came up. She mentioned that if she could start over, she wished her sister, not herself, would be sitting here holding Adam. At that moment, Mary felt something unusual. They continued to run towards the rendezvous point. As expected, zombies appeared as soon as they reached the road. Approaching from almost every direction, Kelly led the way at a gallop. When they entered the opposite woods, zombies began to surround them there as well. They had no choice but to keep running. Finally, they came across an abandoned van and decided to take shelter inside. Zombies were closing in, and the van's door quickly opened. They hurriedly got inside. Mary handed the child to Alden, then closed the van door. Her mission was to lead the zombies away. Mary, while making noise to attract the zombies, led them to the edge of a small river and proceeded to eliminate them one by one. In less than 5 minutes, she had dealt with all the zombies in the area. She smiled, unsure whether it was because she was relieved to have killed so many zombies or because she felt she had finally done something for her nephew. At that moment, Mary felt that the sunlight in the sky was somehow different. Just as her sister had said, she hoped that after this incident, everyone would accept her, and she could finally lead a peaceful life with Adam. However, as Mary turned around, a knife plunged directly into her abdomen. The person who came was the tall Beta. Mary waxed Beta helplessly. Beta was furious that his mask had been torn off and that no one but Alpha had ever seen his true form. Mary was left under a tree, her new life ending before it even began. 10 minutes later, Beta was still waiting in the same spot. He intended to take Mary back to show all the members what happened to those who betrayed. Just then, Alden found the place and saw the scene. Although he didn't spend much time together, he changed his mind about Mary at this moment. On the other side, Magna and Yumiko had managed to escape. Magna recounted the events that occurred in the cave. When the cave entrance collapsed, she and Connie were unharmed and tried to find another way out. However, they inadvertently ended up amidst a horde of zombies. Due to the crushing pressure from the zombies, Connie had been separated and was now missing, her fate unknown. Carol, listening nearby, felt uncomfortable and prepared to leave. Yumiko, unable to bear it any longer, approached her with anger. It's because of this woman that they have suffered so much. Connie's whereabouts are still unknown, and Carol doesn't even apologize and wants to leave. Yumiko, filled with anger, approached Carol and delivered a punch. Carol did not resist. She knew she was at fault. Afterward, she turned and walked away. As she had other matters to attend to, Carol walked to an open area and unexpectedly found Lydia's weapon. Could it be that the girl had been captured? In a different location, Daryl, Rosita, and others were heading towards the rendezvous point, believing that Ezekiel had already arrived there with the children. Soon, they reached their destination, a small house. But as they arrived, zombies emerged. Daryl was anxious and rushed forward, worried that the children might be in danger. The room was empty, and Daryl sighed in relief. But he also started to worry that something might have happened to Ezekiel. Seeing no sign of anyone at the meeting point and not spotting the children, Sherry's wife began to cry. With no choice, Daryl told the others to stay put and they headed back to the hilltop to check out. By this time, the Whisperers had already retreated, leaving behind a scene of devastation and bodies scattered everywhere. At that moment, the iron plate on the ground moved, and they didn't know whether it was a zombie or a human being underneath. Sherry rushed up to check it out, but he didn't realize that it was the one they were looking for, Ezekiel. Ezekiel entrusted his child to Earl. The old man managed to get the kids out and find a house to hide them in. It's not that Earl doesn't want to go to the rendezvous point. It's just that he's been bitten by a zombie and can't hold out much longer.